Hey y'all, I'm DRBibliophile, and I am here to review Brandon Sanderson's excellent book, Mistborn. Now, this is actually a book I read in partnership with Britney over at the channel Clutchheartache. I'll provide a link to her channel in the description below. We are part of the booktuber group on Goodreads, and we were randomly assigned, and we both chose this book to read together. The genre was fantasy. We tossed around a couple ideas. This one came up, and it sounded like a great idea. The only other thing by Sanderson I've ever read is The Arithmetist, his first young adult novel, and I absolutely loved it. So once she told me who the author of this was, it sounded like a great idea, and I am really, really glad I went with it. I enjoyed every second of it. It was one of the best books I've read in a while. Certainly one of the best fantasies I've ever read. Maybe second only to anything by Tolkien. So alright, the first question that every one of you I'm sure is wondering is, okay, what the heck is a Mistborn? Well, a Mistborn is a advanced misting. Isn't that explanatory? Alright, now, what is a misting? In this world called the Final Empire, there are a couple distinct races. You have the Lord Ruler, who is a deity. You have noblemen. You have people called Ska, who are servants of the noblemen. And you have another group called the Terracemen, and I'll get into who they are a little bit later. But within the servant group of the Ska, as well as the noblemen, primarily noblemen, you have what are called mistings. Mistings are people that can use the powers of allomancy. And what allomancy is the ability to consume and what's called burn metals, or really just activate the metals within them to activate certain powers and or abilities. I'll quickly list the 8 allomantic metals and what they do. So it's right here. Here are the metals and what they do. You have iron, which pulls on nearby metals, steel, which pushes on nearby metals, tin, which enhances the senses, pewter, which enhances physical abilities, brass soothes emotions, zinc riots emotions, copper hides allomancy, and bronze reveals allomancy. And it's a very kind of complex magic system that Brandon Sanderson, I'm not sure if it's an idea that's original to him, but it's one of the best well-written ones I've ever seen. Allomancy is very unique in the fact that it has to be inherited. If you are just a low-level Ska, which is just a servant, very similar to like slaves used to be, you're not going to have it. You have to be of noble blood. The only other way a typical Ska can get this is if he has a nobleman in his lineage, either a grandfather or father. It has to be very close line to it. So chances of a typical Ska having this are very, very few. Our main character in this story is a 16-year-old girl named Vin, who is a half-breed. Her father was a high-ranking nobleman, and her mother was like a Ska prostitute. But because her father was a nobleman, she is gifted with the allomantic abilities. However, at the beginning of the story, she does not actually realize she has this. To the point that she realizes, all she knows is that she has a little bit of what she calls luck, and she can use this to kind of influence the minds and the wills of others around her to kind of help her. Vin is part of a thieving group, and she just goes around in the main capital of Luthadel and just tries to survive just like any other street urchin or thief would. And at the beginning of the book, she has this terrible kind of crew leader who just very poorly treats her, and he actually knows about her ability, although she doesn't, and tries to exploit that and use it for his advantage. Vin doesn't actually realize she is a misting, or can use what's actually allomancy, until a strange, mysterious man by the name of Kelsier comes in. Now, Kelsier, I think I need to give a little bit more background for this story, so allow me to do that real quick, and then I'll tell you about who Kelsier is. So as I already mentioned, the world that this story inhabits is called the Final Kingdom, and it is run by the Lord Ruler. What ended up happening is, a long time ago, a unspecific set amount of time, and it's implied maybe up to thousands of years ago, there was a great darkness that was on this land. It's not given whether that is a sentient thing or just an all-presence of evil. It's not exactly said, but with this darkness, a unnamed hero arose to combat it and fight it. And throughout the book we're given hints as to, and glimpses as to what happened, but never a clear representation. But we do know that the darkness was defeated, and that through that the hero became the Lord Ruler, who is now worshipped as deity. He is called like a sliver of God. And he is so powerful that the story says that he's been decapitated before, and it's, their words, mildly irritating to him. He has been burned in a house fire so bad that when he walked out, he was literally just maybe a little bit of muscle and bones and fully recovered. He's been stabbed through with spears multiple times and recovers. So this is the most powerful being in this world, but he has set up through the years a very tyrannical rule and a very strict caste system. And so when we enter this book and the final empire for the first time, we see, just as I already said, a caste system where the Ska are very mistreated by the noblemen. The noblemen are just keep to themselves and don't care about any of those beneath them. The terrorismen, I'll explain them more in a moment, but they are off to themselves, but still kind of hated by everybody else. And it's just a general state of unrest and discord among the nation. Okay, now that you're caught up a little bit, back to Kelsier. Kelsier used to be a crew leader for one of the thieving groups, and he was the best one that had ever been in the city. He was the most successful, but one day he became a little too daring and actually attempted to steal from the Lord Ruler. In punishment for this, he was sent to a terrible area known as the Pits, which when you say it, he was sent to the Pits, it's a little somewhat comical, but maybe not, I don't know. But he was sent there, and he was, after a long time being there and the terrible things that happened to him there, he was actually able to escape, but not after being terribly physically and emotionally scarred from it. But from this, he arose out, kind of found himself, and found his all-consuming passion in life, which is to overthrow the Lord Ruler and bring a kind of democracy to the final kingdom. Kelsier is one of the most charismatic leaders in all of literature, or at least modern literature, certainly fantasy, that I've ever read. He has such a commanding presence, and he is the best leader you could ever have. He doesn't operate by fear or lead with fear or with just absolute force, but instead, almost you could say by love. Those under his crew really respect him and care for him and want to please him. They want to do the best they can, not for any selfish gain, but because he's just such a wonderful guy. And through the entire book, you see every single aspect of leadership in all its different forms explored by Mr. Sanderson. He does a fantastic job. You see the Lord Ruler rule through hate and fear, and you see some of the crew leaders operate in different ways, and then you see how it is leading a small group of people compared to a very large, massive army. It's a great, almost not character study, but study into leadership itself and the different ways that this goes about. And Kelsier is the archetype of a good leader in this story. There's a little bit more background than I tended to give, but let's see if I can get back to what I was talking about. Kelsier actually finds Ven because he's heard of her abilities, and she is, although it's a remarkable ability, she is one of many. So Kelsier, in his quest to overthrow the Lord Ruler, puts together a team of Mistings. As I already explained, they are the people that can operate in using allomancy. But a Misting can only use one of those metals I described, as opposed to a Mistborn who has access to every single one of the allomantic metals. Kelsier is a Mistborn. He is one of the very, very few that have that ability that grants him these fantastic powers to be able to overthrow and manipulate metals and mess with people's emotions and things. But he does this all in a quest for leadership and to overthrow, like I said, the Lord Ruler. But the people he chooses to make up his team are experts in their field of allomancy. So they have a character called Breeze, who is an expert soother, which is actually the first ability that Ven discovered she had. He is somebody that can burn brass, and through this kind of manipulate the emotions of people and get them to do what he wants. He has others as well for each of the respective allomantic abilities that I told you about. It's an excellent team. You really get to see the chemistry between every single one of them. They each have distinct personalities that really come out through the writing style, and for a book this size, I gotta say, through all the dialogue, all the character development, the description of the cities, everything, there is never a dull moment. Even in spots that may not be like a huge action scene, it's so well written and the characters are so great that you never feel as though it's just dragging it out or giving unnecessary exposition. It's a wonderful book. Throughout the entire thing, Ven discovers that she is actually a Mistborn, so she and Kelsier begin this kind of apprenticeship where she does everything possible to help him overthrow, but in the process kind of grow and mature as a person, but also as a Mistborn. One of the most fascinating parts is one of their plans to overthrow the Lord Ruler and restore democracy is to put Ven into noble society. And by doing this, they introduce her to balls and give her a very large backstory where she has this elaborate telling of how she came from the islands and things like that. It's something I've read before, and honestly, when I first saw it come up in this, I was a little bit worried it would just be a rehashing of what I've seen, but it wasn't. It's a theme that had to work with this. It's one of the best ways it could have been done, and through it, it gives so much character development to Ven. We truly see her at different points struggle between, is she Ven, the street urchin thief, or is she this person that she has come up with in her own mind for the high society. So throughout most of the book, there's this almost very difficult struggle of a bit of an identity crisis for her, just trying to figure out really who she is. And by the end of the book, her character has developed so much. She's so much more confident with who she is, and all that is directly related to Kelsier and all the other members of the team. I mentioned that I would briefly come back to the Terrorsmen. They are another group of people. They're not Ska, they're not noblemen, and they're not exactly human, but they are people that, instead of allomancy, which is being able to consume the metals and draw powers from them, they actually are able to wear metals in forms of jewelry or other decoration and fill those with power that they can draw from. Now, they don't have the same abilities that the Allomancers do, but they have the ability to store knowledge, to store even youth or reverse age, so they can disguise themselves. They're fascinating people, and one of the best characters in the entire book is a Terrorsman named Sazed, S-A-Z-E-D. And he just adds so much to her. He really helps Ven discover who she should be. It's a fantastic book, and although it's actually the first of a series, I believe a trilogy, it's a book that could be a standalone. I'm certainly going to continue it, but honestly, if I just stopped here, I would still be missing something, because I'm sure the rest of the series is fantastic, but it is a book that you can read independently by itself. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this video that this was actually a book I was reading in partner with Britney over at Clutchheartache. And what we agreed to do is each of us would finish the book and give a review and post them on our channels, but we also came up with 5 questions for each other that we would answer during our review. So I have hers written down right here, and I'm going to take this time to answer them, and I hope you enjoy the answers, Britney. Alright, number 1. Who was your favorite missing? Mine would have to be Breeze. I mean, he's a very Kelsier-like character in the fact that he's a soother, but he knows he's rich in charisma, and he's a sharp, well-dressed guy, and he's almost like kind of the life of the party guy other than Kelsier, because he's just so jovial and just always a great guy to be around. But when it comes to it, he can be dead serious and get done exactly what he needs to do. A very close second would actually be Ham, simply because he seemed like the most down-to-earth and relatable of the missings. Question 2. Before it was revealed what the blurbs at the top of the chapters were, did you have any idea what they were? If so, what were your ideas? So you have an idea what she's talking about. The books are laid out like this, hopefully you can see, with the chapter head right here, and this maybe sometimes 5 to 10 to sometimes a little bit more italicized text at the beginning. I did have an idea of what they were, and I was right at the very end. They kind of gives you a background of what they were, and so, or a background of the darkness, where I said that it kind of gives glimpses into what it is. That's what it does. So I did have a feeling that is what it was, kind of setting the tone for what's coming and getting you caught up with what happened without the actual characters telling you. But yes, I did kind of have an idea of what they were. Alright, question 3. How did you imagine the Lord Ruler looked before he made his appearance in the story? That's a great question. With a deity figure just like that, and he's so powerful and so much is described about him, I honestly was not able to cast like a very clear, vivid image of what I thought he looked like. All I ever pictured was like this very large and powerful, shadowy figure who would just, every time you would see him command something, you would get this sense of who he was, but never be able to fully grasp who he was, simply because he was so powerful and great. I always pictured, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Lost, I'm sure some of the other viewers have, but the smoke monster, that's kind of what I viewed, just this big, whenever he would be there, he would be surrounded by like billowing volumes of smoke and just a black kind of power aura around him. So when it was finally revealed who he actually was and what he looked like, it was certainly different than what I viewed, but I was very, very pleased with how it turned out. Question 4. How did you find the descriptions of the metal burning? Sometimes I, being Britney, found them a little confusing. I actually loved it. I thought it's one of the most original ways of, I guess you can call it magic, that I've ever seen. It made perfect sense to me. I liked how he assigned different metals, and even some of the baser metals, to some of what I would call like the baser abilities. For example, like pewter, which is a very common metal you find in like silverware, or even like Monopoly pieces are actually made of pewter. So something you find all the time. It just grants the ability of just being something the everyday guy can find. So it gives them the ability to bulk up and just be super strong. They're actually called thugs in the book. So I really, really liked it. It's probably the most original one I've seen in a long time. I like the fact that it's something you had to be born with, but at the same time, even if you were ska, it's something that, as long as you had that history, even if you didn't start out with it when you were a child, it could come on you suddenly. And it's a skill that you didn't just suddenly get all at once, but that could be developed. So I really like the descriptions of the Middleburn. Alright, last question, number 5. Would you rather be a ska or a terrorsman? To me, this answer is pretty simple. I would rather be a ska, simply because you then have that chance and ability to be a misting, or, please thank you and I hope so if this were the case, a Mistborn. And that would be so cool. But I do want to say, a slave ska or a worker ska compared to a terrorsman? Absolutely a terrorsman. Because they are able to store such vast amounts of knowledge. And with me going to college, like 3 weeks from now, being able to store vast amounts of knowledge just by seeing it once would be absolutely amazing. Even if it involves wearing jewelry, it may not fit with the college's dress code, but I would wear like long sleeve constantly if that's what it took. So, regular common ska versus terrorsman, I would absolutely take terrorsman. But if I was like a ska who had like a mother or father who was noble, then absolutely I am taking the ska. So that's about it for the review. Once again, please check out Britney at Clutchheartache. I will have the channel below so you can do it. She has some great stuff. Her channel's not that big, kind of just like mine, so go support her, help her out, and just tell her I sent you over here, and if you're one of her viewers coming to check my video out, thank you very much. I hope you liked what you saw. Please like, comment, subscribe if you did. And always remember, reading is the special key to take you where you want to be. Thanks, and God bless. Bye.